Star Trek Picard, Episode 4, No-Win Scenario. Look, Ma, I can remember episode titles again. Hey, it is Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you from here, the heart of Trekland, just letting the dust settle a bit on all the new Trek headlines. So, you don't get a hot take, you don't get a quick take, but you get a second opinion from Dr. Trek. Hey, I have been writing, editing, interviewing, hosting, archiving, witnessing, dot connecting, and fanning Star Trek for a long time now. So I just wanted to say, no, I'm not kidding. I can remember episode titles now. Is that a barometer of where we are with Star Trek Picard? Thank you, Terry. No, look, I wanted to start off this week just dipping into the mailbag, just a couple minutes. Last week, I should have said something about, more about that Picard Beverly scene. Wow. And yes, it was very much structured where they got closer, starting at odds, starting at other ends of the room and getting closer. But also, there was a lot of flack about Shaw handing off command to Riker and not Picard, or Riker and not Hansen. 7. No, that was the right thing. Picard's retired. She's in the brig, and Riker is the one with family to have to come back to. Just saying. But speaking of Riker, I totally did not point out that was a Jonathan Frakes directorial effort and just part of the secret sauce involved. Now, they direct in blocks of 2, so guess what? This episode is Jonathan's as well. But even more so than that, this episode was a good old next generation puzzle story. Everybody had to put their brains together to think. It was everything short of a good old briefing room conference scene, but who needed the table? I know, we're going to get there eventually. Thank you, trailers. But it was great to see everybody sussing out the problem again. Just like Rock Talk on Prodigy. Or Beverly in Remember Me. Ride the Soliton wave. I mean, that's been done in TNG too before, but it's all good. It's been a while. Good grief. We even got an "if we could" line from Riker this week after Tavine last week. It's piling up. That's what the awesomeness is. That's why it feels so good in the bones. And look what else we got this week. This series is even explaining and retconning Voyager. Remember how Voyager took all the flack for its holodeck? How are you rationing food and replicators when the holodecks get to go 24/7? Well, aside from perking up all the hours that we're having to not invent new aliens of the week because it's Delta Quadrant, Picard lets us know their holodecks on the Titan A are run from a separate power cell for just this reason. If the ship is going down, let's let the crew go self-inoculate themselves and just go die happy in the scenario of their choice. It's kind of like a short-term Atavachron. So thank you for that. Also, the hair joke. Okay, so here's Picard, here's Jack Crusher. It was cute. We learned that Jack Crusher is 22 or 23. Yeah, the hair joke means he's about to lose it if he's really got the same genetic code as Picard. But let's remember something. Jack Crusher died, do the math, do the birth, do the death. Jack Crusher dies in 2353. Picard is 48. So he had hair. If we can trust Beverly's flashback memory sequence, he had hair at Jack Crusher's funeral. So that whole thing about Picard going bald has been a little stretched out of proportion. Let's pull it back to the preponderance of canon. Let's not go trusting some half-cocked Romulan cloning scheme for our basic memory, okay? Which this episode seems to back up, along with Picard's dry wit. Okay, goofy little things. I love Starfleet translights in any century. Whether you're looking for a rogue changeling's goo bucket, whoop, whoop, or you've got a phaser on overload. Either way, they're so handy. But even more so, wow, Picard has a discovery moment. Now, I love the throwback to the Farpoint aliens, which was both to settle the confusion and also set the context. But it was a very ooh-ah, science-y new CGI moment there when we burst the little nebulets there at the end and rode their labor pains. Kind of interesting moment, but it was so Star Trekky and such an aha moment, sure. But even more so, what about that throwback scene at the 10 Forward Bar in LA in 2296? Yes, 5 years earlier. How much have we learned from this? Look, number one, Picard beams in from France to get there. He's not just, this is 3 years before the first season, 3 years before the first season of Picard. It's before the Asha androids even show up at all. He's supposedly a humiliated recluse at home all these years after the synth attack on Mars and his pronouncements and his resignation and all of that. And he's pining away in the vineyards, not the fjords. But he's enough that he beams into LA to maybe see Guinan, have dinner. But what else does this tell us? What else does this tell us? It's also true that even though he's been humiliated, he's got swarms of young cadets who want to talk to him. The outlier was the young officer at Starfleet Academy when he went to see Admiral Clancy. This is where the heart of Starfleet's future is. He has his share of hero worship even now. And you know what else this whole scene does? This validates Lower Decks. Do you remember when Lower Decks was first on the airwaves? Everybody's ridiculing how Boimler and Mariner, they all look up and they talk about Picard and Data and Riker, much less Kirk and Spock, all the time. And people were like, whoa, what do? They all have their own, series. They all have their own DVD collections and they watch them endlessly like fans. No. Look at what we do with Grant and Sheridan and Sherman from the Civil War, much less Eisenhower and Patton and all the generals from World War II. They're idolized. Young military cadets here in the States anyway, they well nigh know the stories of those famous generals, those famous leaders, and their strategies, and their good and their bads, maybe even their daily and weekly exploits. They all want to be the next generation's Patton or the next generation's Ike. It totally is within the realm of possible. This shows the living flesh version of what we got from the Lower Deckers side of things. Yeah. Yes, they idolize these guys and gals. Yes, they're on their lips all the time. And yes, that little young cadre of cadets was not going to take no for an answer, and they were going to hang on every word of Picard's. I thought it was a wonderful validation for the whole Lower Decks attitude that some were criticizing as unrealistic, but makes total sense. In fact, Lower Deckers are only 5 or 6 years removed from those exploits in some places. Remember, Lower Decks is basically 20 years before the events of Picard, and Lower Decks happened even before Picard's reputation was tarnished by the synth attack, much less the stories he's telling them. Now, sure, he's talking to them about Darmok really early in the mission. But this whole setup with Lieutenant Commander Worf and a Hirogen and mention of Janeway, it's got to be after Voyager leaves, but before he is promoted to Admiral and leaves the Enterprise, when he has Worf in his crewman. So this is a story we haven't heard about that's got to be in that 2379 to 2381 window. Just saying. But it does work. Oh, and the people. Jack and his self-hurting visions? Okay, look, forget my theory about the Mycelial network. He's going to the Red Room in the Black Lodge, obviously. Where's the dwarf? I expect him to pop out, the little man, any moment now. Just kidding. But Shaw, wow. I told you. And if you haven't figured it out by now, overanalyze all those opening ending credits. Yes, you can read all about the redacted report from the USS Constance from Wolf 359 there, if you're fast on the pause button. But Shaw, wow, how far he's come, ye of little faith, how far he's come in your estimation. But also, Sidney LaForge, wow, how much we're invested in her to already feel bad that she's being, spoilers, impersonated by a changeling. But even the rest of that bridge crew, Esmar and Tavreen and Mura, you don't think they've been through something they can tell their grandkids about now in the future? This is how legends are born, gang. Of course, Dr. Oak, Trill, joined or unjoined? I'm still waiting to find out. I don't know if she got her job through nepotism, knowing one of the producers or not. Maybe even sleeping with him. Well, okay, being married to him. Google it. And most of all, Vatic, well, now you know the rest of the story. Or do you? The face? The face? The big little head? Most of all, what struck me more and more about this episode as it unspooled. Yeah, I forgot to mention Jonathan directed episode 3. He directed episode 4, too. They're doing blocks. Doug Aronofsky directed 1 and 2. Jonathan has 3 and 4, and so on. They have a different director directing every 2. That kind of amortizes costs when it comes to some of the things they can do that are carrying over from episode to episode sets. They can do 2 episodes at once. Makes it easier. But you know what totally goes by in the old days? In the old days, when actors from the cast, say the way Jonathan directed The Offspring, his first directorial credit, remember what The Offspring had for Riker? He had 1 role. He had 1 scene, the famous kiss and tell bar scene with Lal in 10 Forward. That's the only, because it's such an extra burden on an actor to be directing. Patrick did the same thing. All the go through when Robbie, when Roxanne would direct. It would go, when LeVar, they would go light intentionally on their character so they wouldn't have to spend so much time taking away from their directorial duties. Those days are gone. This Frakes guy, he's 70. He was not only directing these 2 blocks, he was in so much of this show. He was in so much of the show and knocking it out of the park. Oh my God. That last scene especially, where he went from 0 to 60 over the course of these 2 episodes. Yeah, people screaming at Riker, yelling at Picard. No. Riker was the one who had a family to come back to. I get it. I totally get it. But that ending scene, the redemption curve, the following of faith, Beverly's speech about faith, but the way Jonathan pulled... I'm going to talk to him soon, but I'm thinking he's having the time of his life. I think he's said this. He's acting the hell out of these scenes, even when he's got the responsibility of directing. He's got to put himself up there and treat himself equally, not more, but certainly not less. And he's given it all he's got, and it's amazing. It's amazing to see. This is the biggest boost for Riker I see since I remember thinking Best of Both Worlds was finally the blooming of Riker's character, finally, after 3 seasons. This is a whole new level for Riker. It's the maturity, yes, age, wisdom, whatever you want to call it. Just the scenes of trying to dictate a log, dictate is a good word, not send a message to Deanna when they're facing death, but him stumbling around and then being able to easily just do a live message with her. Finally, we're seeing Deanna, by the way, but there's more to come, as you know. But wow. So kudos to Jonathan on this directing stint, these 2 episodes for this year. But directing while you're carrying off that load, that amount of responsibility, and doing it in a way that we've not seen from Riker before, both as a soliloquy with his mail call and then with Picard as well. It was in such a beautiful place. Look, Terry has talked about this season being an homage to especially the movie franchise for Star Trek, TOS and TNG. That last scene, I kept expecting Riker to be smiling with that angelic glow and finally just say, I feel young. Amazing. Amazing. Don't make me tell you what that's from. Okay? And maybe that's a good place to stop. With that, I'm going to sign off on this second opinion. But what do you think? Drop a comment below, okay? Hey, like and subscribe. Boost the signal. I dare you to subscribe for some sanity in Star Trek. Most of all, if you crave more Dr. Trek and our Trekland point of view, check out all of our podcasts and live streams and experiences, all that we offer at LarryNemecek.com. Trek well, everybody.